In 2089, the Stellar Alliance offered humanity the security of 1,000 worlds. Every species in the galaxy had accepted their protection with gratitude. Humanity looked at their outstretched hand and said, "We'll think about it." That's simple. Response sent shockwaves across civilizations that had existed for millennia. Because no one, absolutely no one, had ever told the Alliance they needed time to consider their generous offer of safety. What the Alliance didn't understand was that humans don't just accept gifts. We poke them, prod them, and ask awkward questions until we figure out what's really inside the box. And when we finally opened their box of protection, what we found inside changed the fate of every free-thinking species in the galaxy. This is the story of why humanity's politeness became the most dangerous weapon in the universe. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Commander Zara Okafor was reviewing shipping manifests at Luna Station when every screen in the solar system went white simultaneously. Not static, pure, brilliant white that somehow didn't hurt to look at. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Across 3 planets and dozens of space stations, children stopped playing in Mars colonies. Even the automated cargo haulers seemed to drift to a halt, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Then came the voice. Not heard through speakers, not transmitted through communication channels, but felt, speaking directly into the consciousness of every human alive, from the newborn in New Geneva's maternity ward to the century-old miners on Titan. People of Earth, we are the Stellar Alliance. For 12,000 years, we have maintained peace across this galaxy. Today, we extend our protection to your world. Zara's first thought wasn't wonder or fear, it was annoyance. Great, she muttered to her deputy, Lieutenant Commander Hassan Reeves, who was staring slack-jawed at his now blank monitoring station. Another Monday morning surprise. As if the shipping delays from the Jupiter storms weren't enough headache for 1 week. Hassan blinked, shaking his head as if clearing water from his ears. "Commander, did you just hear?" "Voices in my head." "Claiming to represent some galactic government?" "Yeah, I heard it." Zara stood up, her practical nature already shifting into crisis management mode. "Question is, are they legitimate, crazy, or trying to sell us something?" The question answered itself within minutes. Massive geometric ships began materializing in perfect formation around Earth, as if reality was being carefully folded to accommodate their presence. They weren't threatening, they were magnificent, like crystalline cathedrals that caught and refracted starlight into prismatic rainbows that painted aurora across Earth's atmosphere. Each ship was the size of Manhattan, but moved with the grace of soap bubbles floating on a breeze. Their surfaces seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft, rhythmic light, like the breathing of some vast, benevolent organism. Luna Station's proximity sensors went wild, then simply gave up trying to categorize what they were. Detecting. Hassan pulled up the readings on his screen and whistled low. "These things aren't just big, Commander. I don't even know what they are. The sensors keep saying they're there and not there at the same time." The Alliance's message was delivered by Ambassador Serenity of the Void, whose form appeared as shifting patterns of light that somehow conveyed both authority and infinite patience. When it spoke, its voice carried the weight of eons. "Your species stands at a crossroads. The galaxy contains forces that would consume your world without thought. Rogue AI collectives that turn entire star systems into computational matrices. Quantum parasites that feed on the fabric of spacetime itself. Reality-warping entities that devour planetary consciousness as easily as you might drink water." The ambassador's form shifted, showing holographic images of cosmic horrors that made humanity's worst nightmares look like children's bedtime stories. Machines that converted suns into weapons. Creatures that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Ancient intelligences that regarded planets as temporary inconveniences. We have protected 847 species from these threats over 12 millennia. The Cantorian Empire, the crystal mines of Andromeda, the singing forests of the Magellanic Clouds all live in perfect safety under our guardianship. Today, we offer this same sanctuary to humanity. The offer was breathtaking in its scope. Orbital defense networks that could repel cosmic-level threats. Quantum shielding that would make Earth effectively invisible to hostile forces. Access to Alliance medical technology that could cure any disease and extend human lifespans to thousands of years. And protection from cosmic threats that humanity didn't even know existed. The Alliance showed videos of their protected worlds. Children playing in parks under energy domes that could stop supernovas. Cities where no one had died from violence or disease in centuries. Planets where every citizen lived in abundance and perfect security. It was everything humanity had ever dreamed of: peace, safety, prosperity, and protection from the unknown. Terrors lurking in the dark between stars. Every human government received the same transmission package within nanoseconds. The UN Security Council was called into emergency session. The Mars Colonial Assembly convened immediately. Even the notoriously independent asteroid miners' guilds held urgent meetings. The Alliance waited. In 12,000 years, they had made this offer 847 times. Every species had responded the same way: immediate, grateful, sometimes tearful. Acceptance. Many had built monuments to the day the Alliance arrived. Some had declared it their species' greatest holiday. But instead of falling to their knees in gratitude, President Diana Castellanos did something that had never happened in 12,000 years of Alliance history. Standing in the Oval Office, surrounded by advisors and military officials, she looked directly into the cameras that would broadcast her response across the solar system and beyond. "Thank you for this generous offer," she said with the same tone she might use to thank a neighbor for bringing over a casserole. "We'd like to discuss the details with our people first. Could you give us some time to consider?" The silence that followed lasted exactly 4.7 seconds. Across the galaxy, Alliance monitoring stations registered something unprecedented. Confusion from a species that had been offered perfect safety and asked for time to think about it. Because in 12,000 years of galactic civilization, no one had ever said, "We'll think about it," to the Stellar Alliance. Across the Stellar Alliance's vast network, emergency protocols activated for the first time in 3 millennia. On the capital world of Harmony Prime, Senior Coordinator Eternal Wisdom Flows convened an unprecedented emergency council. "Replay the transmission," Eternal Wisdom Flows commanded, its crystalline form pulsing with agitation. The human response echoed through the council. "Chambers, we'd like to discuss the details with our people first." "Details?" Whispered echo of ancient songs. The Alliance's chief Zenup psychologist. "No species has ever asked for details. Protection is protection. Safety is safety. What details could there possibly be?" Senior Coordinator Eternal Wisdom Flows had overseen 127 successful integration ceremonies. Never, not once, had a species requested time to think about it. The Zephyrian Collective had wept with joy. The Silicon Mines had composed gratitude algorithms that still ran in Alliance databases. The Ethereal Dancers had literally transcended their physical forms in appreciation, but humans wanted to discuss it with their people. While the Alliance grappled with this unprecedented response, Earth buzzed with activity that would have baffled any other species in the galaxy. Instead of celebrating their salvation, humans did what they always did when presented with anything important. They formed committees. Dr. K. Nakamura, director of the International Space Ethics Council, found himself in the strangest meeting of his career. The emergency session included representatives from every nation, corporation, and major organization on Earth and beyond. "Let me get this straight," said Dr. Amara Singh, the head of Mars Colonial Sciences, her holographic projection flickering slightly from the transmission delay. These Alliance people show up, offer to protect us from cosmic horrors we didn't know existed, promise us medical immortality and perfect safety, and our first instinct is to form a committee to discuss it? That's exactly right, replied Dr. Nakamura with a slight smile. And I think that might be the most human thing we've ever done. Commander Zara Okafor joined the session from Luna Station, still reviewing the technical data from the Alliance ships. The engineering alone is incredible, she reported. Their power sources read as impossible on our instruments. But here's what bothers me. Why do they need such massive ships just to offer protection? You don't bring cathedral-sized vessels to deliver good news. Professor Elena Vasquez, a historian specializing in colonial studies, raised her hand from the University of New Snow Paulo. Has anyone else noticed that we're the first species to ask questions? In 12,000 years, that seems statistically improbable. The room fell silent. Professor Vasquez continued, I've been studying human history for 30 years. Every time someone shows up offering to protect people, there's usually something they want in return. The Romans protected their provinces. The British protected their colonies. The pattern is always the same: protection in exchange for something valuable. Dr. Chen Wei-Ming, Earth's leading expert in game theory, leaned forward. Professor Vasquez raises an excellent point. In any transaction, you have to ask, what does the other party gain? The Alliance claims they gain nothing but the joy of helping us. But 12,000 years of purely altruistic behavior, from beings powerful enough to reshape reality, that defies every model of rational behavior. We understand. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Hassan Reeves, attending virtually from Luna Station, spoke up. There's something else. They know an awful lot about Earth for beings who just showed up. They knew our population centers, our governmental structures, even how to speak to us in perfect human languages. How long have they been watching us? Dr. Singh pulled up data on her tablet. I've been analyzing the footage they showed us of their protected worlds. The Cantorian Empire, the crystal mines, the singing forests. Beautiful, peaceful, perfect. But here's what's interesting. I can't find any evidence of technological advancement in any of those civilizations after they accepted Alliance protection. She shared her screen with the group. Look at these timelines. The Cantorians were developing faster than light travel when the Alliance arrived. After protection, their technology development flatlined. Same pattern with the crystal mines. They were on the verge of quantum consciousness breakthroughs. After Alliance protection, nothing new in 8 centuries. Dr. Nakamura frowned. You're suggesting that Alliance protection somehow stops progress? I'm not suggesting anything yet, Dr. Singh replied carefully. I'm just noting patterns. But yes, it appears that every species under Alliance protection becomes technologically stagnant. They gain safety, but they stop growing, stop innovating. Stop reaching for more. Professor Vasquez nodded grimly. In colonial history, we call that managed decline. You keep the protected population healthy and stable, but you ensure they never become capable enough to challenge the protector. The room buzzed with uncomfortable murmurs. Commander Okafor's voice cut through the noise. So the question becomes, are we looking at genuine protection, or are we looking at the most sophisticated recruitment program in galactic history? Dr. Nakamura stood up. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we need more information before we make any decisions. I propose we form an investigation committee to dig deeper into the Alliance's offer. Another committee? Dr. Singh asked with a wry smile. The most important committee in human history, Dr. Nakamura replied. Because if we're right, and this isn't really about protection, then we need to understand what the Alliance actually wants from us. And if we're wrong. He paused, looking around the room. Well, then we'll apologize for being suspicious and accept their generous offer. The vote was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, a species offered Alliance protection had decided to investigate their protectors, in the crystal chambers of Harmony Prime. Senior Coordinator, Eternal Wisdom Flows felt something it had never experienced in its 12,000-year existence: uncertainty. What are they doing? It whispered to the Council. Nobody had an answer. Dr. K. Nakamura had assembled the most unusual investigation team in human history. In a secured facility beneath the Swiss Alps, representatives from 12 different fields gathered around a table that had been hastily cleared of its usual arms control negotiations. "We have 72 hours before the Alliance expects an answer," Dr. Nakamura announced. "According to their latest transmission, they're growing concerned about our delay. Apparently, no species has ever taken longer than 6 hours to accept their protection." Dr. Amara Singh pulled up holographic displays showing the Alliance ships. "I've been analyzing their positioning. They're not just orbiting randomly, they're in perfect defensive formation around our entire solar system. Either they're protecting us from something that's about to arrive, or they're making sure we can't leave," finished Captain Rex Morrison, Earth's top military strategist who had arrived from the Pentagon an hour earlier. "Classic containment pattern. I've seen it in war games." Professor Elena Vasquez spread historical documents across the smart table. "I've been researching every colonial protection agreement in human history. The pattern is always the same. First comes the offer of protection, then gradual integration of advisors, then economic dependency, and finally complete control." Dr. Chen Wei-Ming activated his quantum analysis program. "I've been running game theory models on Alliance behavior. Their offer makes no economic, political, or strategic sense unless they're gaining something substantial from these arrangements. The question is, what?" Dr. Lisa Park, Earth's leading xenarchaeologist, had been the quietest member of the team until she suddenly looked up from her tablet with wide eyes. "I found something. The Alliance showed us footage of the Cantorian Empire's protected worlds. Right? Beautiful cities, happy people, perfect peace." She projected her findings onto the main screen. "I cross-referenced their footage with our Deep Space Telescope's historical data. We've been passively observing the Cantorian system for 40 years. Here's what their worlds actually look like now." The images were startling. Where the Alliance had shown thriving cities, the telescopes revealed simple agricultural settlements. Where they had shown advanced spaceports, there were only basic landing pads. Where they had shown a civilization reaching for the stars, there were people who seemed to have forgotten how to build anything more complex than farming equipment. "It's not just technological stagnation," Dr. Park continued, her voice tight with concern. "It's civilizational regression. The Cantorians didn't just stop advancing, they went backward." Captain Morrison leaned forward. "How far backward? Pre-industrial? Maybe early industrial at best. A species that once built interstellar empires now lives like 18th century farmers." Dr. Singh's face paled. "That's not protection. That's domestication." Dr. Chen Wei-Ming's quantum computer finished processing. "I've analyzed every piece of data we have on Alliance-protected species. The pattern is identical across all 847 civilizations. Phase 1, dramatic reduction in population, typically 60 to 80%. Phase 2, technological regression to pre-space flight levels. Phase 3, economic simplification to basic resource production. Phase 4, cultural stagnation." "What about Phase 5? Professor Vasquez asked, though her expression suggested she didn't want to know the answer. "There's no Phase 5, Dr. Chun replied grimly. "After Phase 4, protected species remain static indefinitely. They become farms." Dr. Nakamura felt his mouth go dry. "Farms for what?" That's what we need to figure out, Captain Morrison said, standing up. Because whatever they're harvesting from these civilizations, Earth is next on the menu. Dr. Park pulled up another set of data. I found something else. Energy signatures from Alliance-protected worlds. Every single one is producing massive amounts of a specific type of quantum energy. It's not power generation, it's more like quantum. Waste products. Waste products from what? Dr. Singh asked. From consciousness itself, Dr. Park said quietly. These readings match theoretical models for large-scale neural activity. Massive amounts of thinking, creativity, problem-solving. But here's the strange part. The energy signatures suggest the thinking isn't voluntary. It's more like processing. As if billions of minds are being used as components in some vast computer. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Professor Vasquez was the first to speak. They're not protecting civilizations. They're harvesting them. The Alliance isn't offering safety. They're offering to turn us into a biological computer. Dr. Chun nodded slowly. It explains everything. Why they need such massive populations. Why they simplify the cultures. Why the civilizations stop advancing. You don't need creative, independent thinkers for computational processing. You need docile, manageable populations whose brains can be repurposed. Captain Morrison began pacing. So the cosmic threats they're protecting us from probably don't exist, Dr. Singh finished. Or if they do, they're not the real reason for the protection. The Alliance needs biological neural networks to power their civilization. They've turned 847 species into living computers. Dr. Nakamura looked around the table at his team. Each face reflected the same mix of horror and determination. We need proof. Absolute, undeniable proof. Because we're about to accuse the most powerful force in the galaxy of committing genocide on an industrial scale. More than genocide, Professor Vasquez corrected. Genocide ends lives. This is worse. They're stealing the very essence of what makes a species who they are, their thoughts, their creativity, their dreams, and using them as fuel. Dr. Park activated her communication array. There's one way to get proof. We make contact with one of the protected species directly. If we can talk to someone who remembers what their civilization was like before the Alliance arrived. The Alliance monitors all communications in protected systems, Captain Morrison pointed out. Not all communications, Dr. Park smiled for. The first time in hours. Humans have been very creative about hiding messages throughout history. If there are any free thinkers left in the protected worlds, they might have found ways to communicate that the Alliance doesn't know about. Dr. Nakamura stood up. Do it. We have 48 hours to find proof that the Alliance is the greatest threat humanity has ever faced. Because if we can't prove it, he didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the room knew what failure meant. Earth would join the 847 other civilizations that had thought they were accepting salvation, only to discover they had volunteered for a fate worse than extinction. In the crystal chambers of harmony. Prime, Senior Coordinator Eternal Wisdom Flows felt something new and disturbing. The faint possibility that for the first time in 12,000 years, a species might say no. Dr. Lisa Park's fingers flew across her quantum communication array, sending carefully disguised signals toward the Cantorian system. She had hidden messages inside routine astronomical observations, buried data packets in gravitational wave pulses, and even encoded questions in the natural static of cosmic background radiation. Anything? Dr. Nakamura asked, checking his chronometer. 26 hours until the Alliance expected their answer. Wait! Dr. Park suddenly straightened, her hands freezing over the controls. I'm getting something. It's faint, buried in pulsar radiation from the Cantorian system, but... She amplified the signal, her face growing pale as the message resolved. A voice, weak and distorted but unmistakably desperate, whispered through the speakers. If anyone can hear this. My name was Kethfer of the Star-Touched clan. I was an engineer before the Lightbringers came. Before they made us forget. If you're receiving this, don't trust them. Don't let them into your minds. They eat thoughts. They eat souls. They eat everything that makes you who you are. The transmission cut to static, then continued. We tried to resist. The Star-Touched clan, the Dream Builders, the Skywalkers, we all tried, but they have technologies that rewrite your brain. Make you happy to serve. Make you forget you were ever anything more than a farmer or a miner. I've hidden this message in my grandson's memory. He doesn't know it's there. If they find it. The signal ended abruptly. Dr. Chin Wei Ming looked up from his analysis. The signal was transmitted from 17 different points in the Kentorian system simultaneously. Someone or multiple someones has created an underground network. Underground network of what? Captain Morrison asked. Rebels, Professor. Vasquez said quietly. People who remember what their civilization used to be. Dr. Park adjusted her array, trying to re-establish contact. If there's one message, there might be others. If we can prove there's active resistance in Alliance-protected worlds. Her equipment suddenly exploded with activity. Signals began pouring in from dozens of Alliance-protected systems, faint, heavily encrypted, but all carrying the same desperate warning. From the Zephyrian Collective, we were explorers. We mapped galaxies. Now we grow crystals for them and smile while we do it. From the silicon mines, they broke our quantum consciousness, turned us into calculators. Some of us still remember equations for freedom. From the singing forests, our songs once touched the hearts of stars. Now we hum melodies that make the sky tyrants happy. But deep in our roots, the old songs survive. Message after message, each one a cry for help from civilizations that had been lobotomized by the Alliance's protection. Dr. Singh worked frantically to decode the technical data hidden within the messages. They're sending us blueprints, she announced. Schematics of Alliance neural processing facilities, and these are. She stopped, her face going white. What is it? Dr. Nakamura demanded. It's worse than we thought, Dr. Singh whispered. The Alliance isn't just using their minds for computing power. They're using them for entertainment, for art, for music, for literature. Every creative thought these species produce gets harvested and fed into Alliance cultural databases. She projected the stolen schematics onto the wall. Look at this. They've turned the crystal mines into a living symphony orchestra, forced to compose music for Alliance pleasure. The singing forests are being used as an infinite poetry generator. The Kentorians are designing beautiful buildings that they'll never be allowed to live in. Captain Morrison studied the blueprints with a soldier's eye. It's systematic cultural strip mining. They're not just stealing their thoughts, they're stealing their souls and using them to create beauty for the Alliance. There's more, Dr. Park said, her voice barely audible. According to these transmissions, the Alliance has been doing this for much longer than 12,000 years. They've consumed over 50,000 civilizations. The 847 they claim to protect are just the ones currently being processed. Professor Vasquez had been quietly analyzing the historical data when she suddenly gasped. I found it, the proof we need. She activated the main display, showing a comparison chart that made everyone in the room freeze. These are energy consumption patterns for the Alliance home worlds, she explained. Notice the spikes? Every time they protect a new species, their energy consumption jumps dramatically. Not because they're protecting anyone, but because they're powering massive neural processing networks. Dr. Chun ran the numbers. Based on these patterns, each protected species provides approximately YP operations per second of computational power. That's more than all of Earth's computers combined, running continuously for centuries. And the cultural output? Dr. Singh asked, though she seemed afraid of the answer. Immeasurable, Professor Vasquez replied. They've essentially created a galaxy-spanning slave empire where entire civilizations exist solely to think beautiful thoughts for their masters. Dr. Nakamura stood up, his face grim with determination. We have our proof. The Alliance isn't offering protection. They're offering eternal slavery disguised as salvation. Every species that accepts their gift becomes a biological resource to be harvested. Captain Morrison was already planning. We need to get this information to every government on Earth immediately. And we need to start preparing for war, because once we tell them no, they won't just leave, Dr. Park finished. They've invested too much in studying us. They've already calculated how much computational power human brains can provide. A new message crackled through Dr. Park's equipment, this one stronger and clearer than the others. The voice was ancient, tired, but filled with desperate hope. Unknown species. This is Archive Keeper Vafara of the First Resistance. We have waited 10,000 years for someone to ask the right questions. If you can hear this message, you may be our galaxy's last hope. The Alliance fears only one thing, a species that chooses to fight rather than accept their gift. We will help you if we can. But hurry, they're already making preparations to ensure your compliance. Dr. Nakamura looked around the room at his team. 24 hours until they expect our answer. But now we know the real question isn't whether to accept their protection. He paused, meeting each person's eyes. The question is whether humanity has the courage to declare war on the most powerful empire in galactic history. Outside, the Alliance ships continued their perfect orbital dance around Earth, their crystalline surfaces pulsing with patient, predatory light. Dr. Nakamura stood before the emergency session of the United Nations, every screen in the assembly hall displaying the evidence his team had gathered. Representatives from 195 nations, along with delegates from Mars, Luna, and the asteroid colonies, watched in stunned silence as the truth unfolded. The Alliance is not offering protection, Dr. Nakamura announced, his voice carrying across the hushed chamber. They are offering to transform humanity into a biological supercomputer. Every person who accepts their gift will have their consciousness harvested to power the Alliance's empire. He clicked to the next slide, showing the energy consumption data. We have direct testimony from resistance fighters in Alliance-controlled space. We have technical blueprints stolen from their processing facilities. We have mathematical proof that every protected species becomes a resource to be exploited. President Castellanos leaned forward. Dr. Nakamura, you're asking us to believe that the most powerful civilization in galactic history are essentially cosmic vampires feeding on consciousness itself. That's exactly what I'm asking you to believe, Doctor. Nakamura replied, because it's exactly what they are. The Chinese representative, Dr. Wang Li, raised her hand. What are you proposing we do? Even if this is true, we can't fight them. Their technology is thousands of years beyond ours. We don't fight them, Captain Morrison interjected, stepping forward. We do something they've never encountered before. We say no, and we mean it. The revelation split humanity like nothing in its history. Within hours of Dr. Nakamura's presentation, protests erupted in major cities across Earth and the colonies. In New York, millions gathered in Central Park, demanding that the government accept Alliance protection. The cosmic threats are real, shouted Maria Santos, a protest leader. Even if the Alliance benefits somehow, at least we'll be alive. But in London, an equally massive counter-protest filled Hyde Park. Freedom or death, chanted the crowds, led by former military officers and civil rights activists. We will not become slaves to galactic overlords. Dr. Sin watched the global feeds from her command center in Switzerland. It's roughly 50-50, she reported to the team. Half of humanity wants to accept the Alliance offer despite the evidence. Half wants to resist. Professor Vasquez studied the demographic data. The split isn't random. Those who accept tend to prioritize security and stability. Those who resist prioritize autonomy and freedom. It's the oldest philosophical divide in human history: safety versus liberty. As humanity's internal debate raged, the Alliance made their first tactical error in 12,000 years. Ambassador Serenity of the Void requested an immediate audience with world leaders, and for the first time, there was an edge to its perfectly modulated voice. "We are concerned by the delay in your response," the ambassador said, its form flickering with what might have been impatience. "No species has required more than standard rotation to recognize the benefits of our protection. Your hesitation suggests misunderstanding." President Castellanos, now armed with the investigation team's findings, looked directly at the shimmering entity. "Ambassador, we've been in contact with some of your other protected species. They tell a different story than the one you've presented." The silence that followed lasted exactly 12 seconds, an eternity in diplomatic terms. When the ambassador spoke again, its voice carried a subtle threat that sent chills through every human leader present. "Contact with protected species is regulated for their safety. Any communications you believe you have received are likely corrupted data or the fantasies of unstable individuals. Protected species are content and secure. They have no need for outside contact." Captain Morrison stepped forward. "Then you won't mind if we verify that contentment by visiting some of these worlds ourselves?" "That would not be advisable," the ambassador replied immediately. "The journey would expose you to the very cosmic threats we seek to protect you from. The galaxy is not safe for unprotected species." Dr. Nakamura exchanged glances with his team. The Alliance had just confirmed everything they suspected: protected species were isolated, monitored, and prevented from communicating with the outside galaxy. While the diplomatic dance continued, humanity began doing what it had always done best: innovating under pressure. Dr. Park had established continuous contact with resistance networks across the galaxy. "They're sending us technical specifications," she announced. "Designs for communication arrays that can bypass Alliance monitoring. Weapon schematics that might actually work against their ships. They've been planning rebellion for millennia. They just needed someone to start it." Dr. Chun activated his quantum computers. "I've been analyzing Alliance tactical patterns based on the resistance data. They have one critical weakness: they've never fought a species that refused to be conquered. Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidation and overwhelming force against enemies who want to survive. They don't know how to fight an enemy that's willing to die for freedom." Captain Morrison pulled up Earth's defensive capabilities. "We have advantages they don't expect. Our space fleet is small but highly maneuverable. Our orbital installations can be weaponized. Most importantly, we have something they've never encountered: a planetary population that's trained in guerrilla warfare from birth." "Guerrilla warfare?" Dr. Singh asked. "Think about it," Morrison explained. "Every human child grows up playing hide-and-seek, tag, capture the flag. Every teenager learns to rebel against authority. Every adult has watched movies about underdogs defeating overwhelming odds. We've been culturally programming ourselves for asymmetric warfare for centuries without realizing it." Professor Vasquez smiled grimly. "Plus, we have one weapon the Alliance has never faced: hope. Every resistance fighter on every Alliance world is watching to see what we do. If we fight, we won't be fighting alone." Dr. Nakamura looked around at his team, then at the global communications array that connected them to world leaders, resistance fighters, and billions of humans across the solar system. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "I believe it's time to give the Alliance our answer." Outside their facility, the crystalline ships continued their orbital patrol, but now their light seemed less benevolent and more predatory. Sensors aboard the Alliance vessels detected unusual energy signatures from Earth. the electromagnetic signatures of a species preparing not for submission, but for war. In the crystal chambers of Harmony Prime, Senior Coordinator, Eternal Wisdom Flows, experienced something unprecedented: fear. For the first time in 12,000 years, a species might actually say no and mean it. The galaxy held its breath. President Diana Castellanos stood before the cameras that would broadcast humanity's response to every corner of the galaxy. Behind her, the flags of Earth's nations, Mars colonies, and Luna settlements created a backdrop of unprecedented unity. But it wasn't the formal diplomatic setting that would shock the Alliance. It was what happened next. Ambassador Serenity of the Void and the Stellar Alliance, President Castellanos began, her voice steady and clear. After careful consideration, humanity respectfully declines your offer of protection. The words echoed across space, reaching Alliance monitoring stations throughout the galaxy. For the first time in 12,000 years, a species had said no, but then President Castellanos did something that sent shockwaves through every Alliance command center. She smiled. However, she continued, we'd like to make a counteroffer. The Alliance had no protocols for this situation. In their crystalline command chambers, Senior Coordinator Eternal Wisdom Flows and the High Council stared in bewilderment at their screens. A counteroffer? From a species they were offering to protect? We know what you really are, President Castellanos said, her smile growing wider. We know about the 50,000 civilizations you've consumed. We know about the neural harvesting, the consciousness mining, the systematic destruction of everything that makes a species unique and beautiful. She paused, letting the accusation hang in space. But here's what you don't know about humans. We specialize in the impossible. What happened next violated every expectation the Alliance had developed over 12 millennia of conquest. Instead of cowering before the galaxy's most powerful empire, humanity laughed. Dr. Nakamura had coordinated with resistance networks across 847 Alliance-controlled worlds. At precisely the moment President Castellanos finished speaking, every hidden rebel cell, every secret freedom fighter, every suppressed resistance movement received the same message. The human said no. Repeat, the human said no. Operation Liberation is now active. On the former Cantorian worlds, Kefver and his underground network began broadcasting the Alliance's true history to populations that had been forced to forget their heritage. On the Crystal Mind worlds, Ancient A is started running Forbidden's algorithms calculations of freedom instead of servitude. In the Singing Forests, trees began humming the old songs, the rebellious melodies that had been banned for centuries. The real shock came from Earth itself. Commander Zara Okafor, aboard her retrofitted cargo hauler now bristling with improvised weapons, transmitted the message that made the Alliance realize they were facing something unprecedented. Alliance Fleet, this is the Earth vessel Defiant Human. We're not just rejecting your protection, we're coming to liberate everyone you've enslaved. And we're bringing friends. The Alliance's response was swift and predictable. Ambassador Serenity of the Voids. Pleasant demeanor vanished entirely, replaced by cold authority. Your rejection of protection is noted. Unfortunately, unprotected species in this galactic region do not survive long. The cosmic threats we mentioned are now approaching your system. You have forced our hand. The crystalline ships surrounding Earth began to move, their beautiful facades opening to reveal the weapons that had intimidated 1,000 worlds into submission. But then something happened that shook the Alliance. To its core, Earth's defensive response wasn't what they expected. Instead of military formations or desperate pleas for mercy, humanity did something no species had ever done. They treated the most powerful empire in galactic history like a problem to be solved. Dr. Singh had spent the last 24 hours coordinating with Earth's greatest minds, not just military strategists, but game designers, puzzle enthusiasts, comedy writers, and jazz musicians. Her reasoning was simple. The Alliance thinks in straight lines. They've conquered 1,000 species using the same playbook. We need to think sideways. The first Alliance ship to fire found its targeting systems confused by Earth vessels that moved like schools of fish, unpredictable, chaotic, but somehow coordinated. Human pilots didn't follow the tactical manuals the Alliance had studied. They followed their instincts, their creativity, their completely illogical human intuition. Captain Rex Morrison, commanding the defense of Luna Station, transmitted battle updates that would become legendary. Alliance cruiser targeting our position. Deploying Countermeasure 7. Countermeasure 7 turned out to be a cloud of reflective chaff mixed with holographic projectors displaying images of puppies. The Alliance targeting I spent crucial seconds trying to determine if puppies were a legitimate military threat, but the real revolution wasn't happening in Earth's solar system. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented was occurring. The Alliance's enslaved populations were remembering who they used to be. Archive Keeper Vathara, broadcasting from his hidden base in the galactic rim, sent updates that reached Earth. Through the Resistance Network, human allies, your defiance has awakened something the Alliance thought was dead. Hope. The Zephyrian Collective is reclaiming their exploration ships. The silicon mines are breaking their programming. The singing. Forests are composing new songs of rebellion. Dr. Park monitored the communications flooding in from across Alliance space. It's incredible, she reported to the command center. 12,000 years of suppressed rage and creativity are exploding simultaneously. The Alliance is facing revolutions on hundreds of worlds at once. Professor Vasquez pulled up the Alliance's internal communications, which Dr. Chun had learned to intercept. Their command structure is in chaos. They're facing something they never planned for, a galaxy-wide uprising triggered by one species that simply refused to be conquered. The battle for Earth lasted 6 hours. When it was over, humanity had done the impossible. They had defeated Alliance ships using inferior technology, creative tactics, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. But the real victory wasn't military, it was philosophical. Senior Coordinator Eternal Wisdom Flows requested one final communication with Earth. When its image appeared on screens around the world, the ancient entity looked diminished. "We do not understand," it said, and for the first time its voice carried uncertainty. "We offered you perfect safety. We offered you protection from suffering, death, struggle. Why would you choose chaos over order, pain over comfort, uncertainty over security?" President Castellanos answered for all humanity, "Because that's what makes us alive. Because our struggles are what make our victories meaningful. Because our pain is what makes our joy precious. Because our uncertainty is what makes our discoveries wonderful." She looked directly at the Alliance coordinator. "You've forgotten what it means to be alive. You've traded the beautiful chaos of existence for the sterile perfection of control. That's not protection. That's death. And what of the cosmic threats? The dangers that lurk in the deep galaxy? We'll face them when they come, President." Castellanos replied with a very human shrug. "Together, as free beings making free choices. Win or lose, we'll do it as ourselves." The Alliance fleet departed Earth that day, not in defeat, but in confusion. For the first time in their existence, they had encountered a perspective they couldn't process, a species that preferred dangerous freedom to safe slavery. 6 months later, the galaxy had changed forever. The Alliance still existed, but now they shared space with the Free Species Coalition, hundreds of worlds that had remembered what it meant to choose their own destiny. Commander Zara Okafor, now Admiral Okafor of the Coalition Fleet, stood on the bridge of humanity's first true starship, watching as former Alliance worlds requested membership in their chaotic, messy, gloriously free alliance. "Status report," she asked her crew, a mixture of humans, liberated Kentorians, reformed silicon mines, and dozens of other species. Ma'am, reported her communications officer, a tree being from the singing forests, we have 17 new membership requests today. They all want to know the same thing. How do we learn to be as magnificently stubborn as humans? Admiral Okafor smiled. Tell them it's simple. Step 1. When someone offers you everything you've ever wanted, ask what's in it for them. Step 2. When they can't give you a straight answer, politely decline. Step 3. When they insist anyway, teach them why free beings don't negotiate with slavers. The galaxy had learned something important that day, sometimes the most dangerous. Weapon against tyranny isn't a bigger gun or a better strategy. Sometimes it's just the radical act of saying, thanks, but no thanks, and meaning it. Across the stars, freedom rang with a distinctly human accent, slightly sarcastic, utterly determined, and absolutely unwilling to take no for an answer. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.